I'm Tom Nachu. Welcome to Fraud Squad. In this episode, you're going to meet and actually enter the mind of a convicted fraudster. He used his brains as well as his charm to defraud many people out of their money, but more than that, he devastated the hearts of women he lured into the fraud, leaving a trail of financial ruin and broken hearts.
This whole relationship was a sham. It was a scam.
This fraud was not a victimless crime, and it left a path of ruin and heartache and bankruptcy and broken trust and sickness.
I'm convinced that he's a sociopath.
Always felt that I was on the periphery looking in.
There were hundreds of thousands of dollars collected.
His debt with my family alone was over $500,000.
He preys on single mothers, mainly with children.
I don't suspect that the people that I hurt are even close to being through this, to being healed.
Jeff Kent targeted women in order to make his fraud work. He created a fictional life for himself. He became a financially secure doctor and convinced women to help him develop a new business. The business included online hotel reservations and was all just a scam. Kent used the business to steal people's credit card information and left the women holding the bag.
I met Jeff. I was in a restaurant with my friend for dinner. After dinner, we moved to the bar, and Jeff was at the bar. He mentioned he was a doctor, but at the moment, he wasn't practicing.
I really didn't think that it was going to ever go on beyond that meeting, and I was really quite grandiose in the story that I told her. I told her I was a doctor.
There was this business at the same time he was doing.
I told her that I had this travel business that I was focusing on at the time, and I wasn't practicing. She believed me. She trusted me.
He mentioned that he has a daughter who's living in California, who's studying, had a wife, just passed away from cancer. At the moment, a family member has been battling cancer, and so it was kind of close to home and just kind of clicked right there. He could relate to what I was feeling, so.
She had been married before and had a 9-year-old son, and she lived a pretty hard life, and I think that when she met me, she had a lot of hope.
At the end of the night, we exchanged phone numbers, and just like any other single people meet, you know, at the restaurant, at the bar, at the movie. Just a normal scenario. She phoned me the next day, asked me out for lunch.
Kent now had one of his future victims. Kent asked Natasha on several dates, and after a few months, the relationship started getting serious. Or so Natasha thought.
He was a nice guy. He was a sweet guy. He was a caring person. He loved animals. For God's sakes, he adopted 2 pets for me. And that's what he does. That's his MO. He goes to family. He gets involved deeply. He goes to SPCA and adopts a pet. That just gets you all in a big, loving, happy family.
I had all the sort of trappings that a doctor would have, apart from being a doctor. I had a nice home, I had a nice vehicle, I lived a very somewhat lavish and luxurious life.
He would take people off medication and in front of me would give people medical advice and take stitches out. I mean, anything that doctor would do. It's pretty surreal to watch him remove somebody's stitches or take them off like a psychotic medication.
He went on holiday maybe about 4 months into our relationship. He kept calling all the time, emails. It was like he was there all the time. Say that he would miss me and wants to see me again and can't wait until I get back. When I got back, he literally proposed to me that night. I felt like he was the one, just a great, nice guy, worthy to be a part of my life.
Kent and Natasha were married, and soon after, Kent convinced Natasha and her sister to invest in his online hotel reservation business. Romance scams often start through meetings on the internet dating websites or chat rooms. True or false? Well, the answer is true. Romance scammers use dating websites and set up fake profiles in order to attract possible victims for their fraud. The fraudster's intent is to trick the people they meet on these sites out of their money.
The business that Jeff Ken operated was an online hotel reservation site. So what he would do is advertise hotels at a discounted rate. So if somebody from anywhere in the world looked at his website, there were hotels that were cheaper than the actual rate being offered by the actual hotel. So clients were naturally attracted to his website and would contact the business and would provide them with their credit card information.
Kent set up this fraudulent business and lured Natasha's sister to move across the country to work. Kent tricked the sisters into signing all of the financial documents. Kent needed the sisters' good credit.
Because it was my sister, it made it a little easier. It wasn't somebody I met on the street corner who claimed to have a business and was a doctor. And almost immediately he took us around and showed us a couple offices. We picked a location, and he said, now we're gonna have to go and register a few business names. And so we went and we picked like 5. I said, why 5? He said, well, because sometimes, you might want to separate the businesses, so it's better to have several entities than just one. And it was kind of odd because none of the business names that we chose said hotel. He called it a partnership, said it would be a partnership, a 50-50 partnership. However, everything had to be in my name. So all the bank accounts had to be in my name, all the registrations had to be in my name. He had the full control of the accounts. First of all, I didn't understand how merchant services works.
If you were to go and start up a business today, you were to start up a similar business today, and you were to apply for merchant services, it would be all based on your good credit, not what you own or whatnot. As long as the people that I was asking to be the owner of the business had good credit, they didn't need to have any type of established equity in their lives.
All it is an application which you sign up and put your SIN number and address and a signature, and then you fax it in, and then 5 days later there's a knock on your door and there's a terminal laying at the door. So anybody, theoretically knowing my name and my address and could fake whatever signature and putting my SIN number, could get that terminal and Bob's your uncle. Obviously you need accounts to go with it, but it's just so easy to get that equipment that it was unreal.
I was in control of the accounts. I kept control of it. I was a doctor. I could be trusted. My wife and sister-in-law, they didn't know necessarily what was happening with the business because everyone thought I was a doctor and everyone thought I was an upstanding person. They trusted me and let me control the business and all of its accounts.
We were all together. We were all one group, and it was a business that was a legitimate business that was meant to bring a lot of profit and prosperity.
The ticket cost on hotels is, average hotel is $150 a night. So if someone is staying an average of 2.5 nights, each sale would be $500. So on a lot of days, we would do 100 sales, and that would be $50,000 in sales a day.
The hotel reservation business brought in a lot of money. But Natasha and her sister started to get worried because they were receiving way too many customer complaints. Imagine showing up at a hotel thinking you had a reservation, and the hotel has never heard of you.
And they're calling me on my cell phone because we redirected, like when we would leave the office. He didn't do it, but I did. I directed like my regular phone line to my cell phone so I could catch those calls at night. I thought if it's a new customer or an existing customer service. So they would call me, right? Time zones are different. 3 o'clock in the morning, I would wake up, freak out, and I'm at the hotel and my reservation isn't there and there's no room at this hotel. And I was terrified because first of all, I thought we've done something wrong and that's not okay because I've been a traveler many times. That's not fun, that's not cool. So what he would do is he would have a database of all these credit cards that he had taken in 4, 5, 8 months of operating a business. And he waited for the very last minute until he knew that would hit the fan. And so in one night or in 2 nights, he would take pull out all of his records and all of his credit card numbers from his files, and it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars valued, and he would ring them all in at once, so process each card. The merchant company the following day would make a deposit. So if he closed the batch off today for $150,000, the following day that merchant company would make a deposit to his account. So what he would do is he would wait until he knew that he's about to skip out or this is it. And so he would take that $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 and bring them at once. And then he knew that that's it for this company, for this business. He'd cash out the money.
Though my wife and her sister and brother-in-law were complicit in being involved in the business, they were not part of the online fraud where I would defraud customers of their credit cards.
What is a sign that you may have fallen victim to a romance scam? Someone has fallen in love with you very quickly? Your new romantic interest asks you for help financially? The person you are seeing is vague about their background and family history? All of the above. Well, the answer, of course, is all of the above. Although we all like to believe that love can happen quickly, normally it takes its own course in time. Secondly, if your new lover is vague about their family or they want to borrow money almost immediately, these are all signs that you may be involved in a romance scam. Kent was worried that some of the people he ripped off in the hotel might complain to the police. So he took the bold step of visiting the police department to find out any information on the investigation.
Kent told me that he had been told by an investigator from Consumer Protection that the police had entered into a criminal investigation that was in conjunction with their investigation, and he simply wanted to come in and find out if he could help us. My first impression of Kent was he was trying to obtain information from the police as opposed to his expressed reason why he wanted to talk to us. When I started to interview him, he was asking me more questions than what I was trying to ask him. I had to stop Jeff during the interview and explain to him that that's not how the police investigation process is going to work, that somebody doesn't just walk in off the street and request information from the police about what we're investigating and what their role is in the investigation.
Well, Detective Menzies knew something was up after this strange encounter with Kent. Menzies left the interrogation room and started to check Kent out.
When I discovered there was in fact a victim that had come forward, and I started to present that information to Mr. Kent, he decided he did not want to speak any longer to me, maybe fearful that he was going to provide information to the police that was detrimental to him.
Kent's house of cards was now very fragile and could come tumbling down at just about any moment. Kent used his smooth talking abilities and told the sisters that the police may want to talk to them. He calmly claimed that nothing was wrong and the police were just out to get him.
Thought that at some point I was going to bail out the financial mess that I had created. I had no means to do so.
And finally, the day came, he ran out of excuses. I was 7 months pregnant, and he just laid it out. Like, everything I am is a lie. Everything I said is a lie. There is no ex-wife who died. There is no child who is living in California. There is no money. There is no doctor. There is no nothing. I'm just a fake, and I'm a loser. But open this door, I want to get out. I need to go. I knew I knew it was a reality. I knew I'm standing on my feet. I just knew that I have to keep him in this apartment until the police show up. This guy is a crook, and he wants to run away from just taking away from me so much, and he just wants to disappear into a thin air. And that's when I didn't let him go, because I couldn't let guard of the door. I stood there guarding the door. Took my head and started smacking it against the door. He walked over to the phone, called 911 and said, I'm trying to leave my house and my wife is not letting me go. And then they're asking him, put your wife on the phone. So this person on the end of the line can hear this conversation. Of course, she dispatches the police.
The police arrived and arrested Kent for assault. He quickly made bail and disappeared into thin air. No one knew where he was, and the police now wanted to arrest him for the fraud. Police doggedly worked on the case to track down this serial fraudster.
My child was born, and I had to have custody arrangements for my child, and it's just a must. And so Jeff Kent was nowhere to be found, and I Googled Jeff Kent's name, and this website came up. Something medical BC, and Jeff Kent is on the list amongst numerous of doctors. There's a place on that page where you can make a comment about the doctor, and that's where I made a comment saying that not a doctor, a fraud, a criminal.
If you think you've been the victim of a romance scam, what should you do? Arrange to meet the scammer in a public place so you can confront him or her? Cease all contact immediately. Advise the dating service and report the fraud to police. Play along with the scammer and try to trick him or her out of his money. Try to find other victims of the fraudster. Well, the answer is B. Dealing with fraud artists and scammers is a matter for the police. Report all you know about the fraudster to your local police. They may have other complaints, and they may be able to make an arrest.
2 years before we were able to process all of the information and determine victims, put everything together, and I started learning about new victims still as I was investigating these businesses. He was still out there doing it exactly, and meeting people and socially engineering them to believe he was somebody that he wasn't. So when I arrested Jeff, he was in a house with one of his new victims, and her family had actually flown in to be with her for the wedding. The charges were fraud over $5,000. I think we had several counts because each of the women were a count and combined with the losses in the credit card companies. Jeff, he pled guilty and he was sentenced to 4 years in jail.
Do I believe that he planned this? Yes, I do. But I don't think necessarily it was planned for me per se. The plan was an existent plan. He works in a plan. He just changed the characters and the names and the last names, but it's a system that works for him.
You gotta really look into everything. You have to get to know their family and their friends, and just really look into everything. There are many Jeff Kents out there.
I think we're all capable of doing anything that we've already done once. I think that if the circumstances were to line up again, if I was to end up in the exact same position that I was back then, I think I'm absolutely capable of doing it again.
Now, we want to hear from you, so Fraud Squad takes it to the streets to hear some of your stories.
My biggest, boo-hoo is women. Romantic con artists, because there are a lot of men out there who are doing this. They're calling women, they're falling in love with these women on the internet. Women have been taken advantage of for so long, and then also there are men who have been taken advantage of because of women that are con artists. But the romantic con artist has not been discussed enough as far as I'm concerned. Don't just move on. Speak up, because the laws have not caught up with romantic con artists. We did not have internet laws 30 years ago. We do now, because we had to make the laws as the crimes were being committed. And this is one of those unspoken, unclaimed, uncharged crimes, because everybody tells them, oh, just move on, just get on with your life, just forget about it, just get him out of your life. Don't let him get away with it. Exactly. So please, women, men too, pay attention to what you're doing, how you're living, what you're allowing someone to convince you to put on the internet. And that includes charge card numbers, everything. Be more discreet, physically and business-wise.
It was just a friend's experience. I remember her losing her, she called it identity loss. And it was such a emotional experience for her. She really felt that she was, privacy was invaded. She felt very, very threatened. And it took her almost 6 months to get over that experience, actually. It's like someone coming into your home and stealing your stuff, right? So, yeah, and they took on her name, they took on her birth date, everything. And she had to change every ID she had. And it was really traumatic for her. I only remember that.
I think sometimes online dating sites are a little bit of a scam. I don't know what to say. I mean, maybe it works for people, but I just think, be careful if you're going on there. I mean, it sure works, but I just think be careful.
Well, we've come to the end of another episode of Fraud Squad. Remember, we're fighting fraud together. Hi there, I'm Tom Natcher. Welcome to another episode of Fraud Squad. Now, identity theft is when someone assumes your identity by stealing your personal identification information. Home address, social number, driver's license number, bank account, or credit card numbers, or virtually any combination of the above. What they do is apply for credit in your name, spend all the money available, and leave you stuck with the bill. In tonight's episode, we'll see how one identity theft police officer was herself a victim of identity theft. But first, the story of a slippery character who managed to elude police just as they were closing in by assuming a new identity several times before eventually being captured.
What was interesting about Randy Campbell, unlike many identity thieves, is that he did a complete takeover of that person's identity. He rented an apartment in that person's name. He did purchases in that person's name.
A completely different criminal, as it were, a different case for us than we normally see. We're here with someone that's walking around as an actor would in a TV show or a movie. I am not who I really am. I am, in this case, Bogdan Volk or Jason Deckard.
But what separated him from many other identity thieves is that as soon as he knew he was caught, the very next day, he was able to rent another apartment in yet a different victim's name.
In May of 2009, I received a phone call from an Auburn, Washington Police Department detective telling me that she'd been contacted by a citizen of Auburn, Washington, Bogdan Volk, and he reported to her that there was someone in the Portland metro area using his name to purchase items and to rent an apartment.
I was checking my mail on Sunday and opened up an envelope that was addressed to me. I noticed it was from Portland, and I haven't been in Portland in a while, and it was from a jewelry store, so that kind of intrigued me. So I opened it up, and it was thanking me for a recent purchase of a Rolex watch and a diamond ring. Didn't know what to think. So I just put it aside momentarily and just started looking through the rest of my mail. Then the next piece of mail was a decline of credit from Nordstrom. That was really odd. Here I made a purchase, and here I got declined, and I didn't apply for credit. Last time I checked, I didn't have a Rolex.
Of course, the store remembered who came in to do that transaction. And so then the game is on as far as trying to locate that individual.
Officer Staub learns that an apartment has been leased out under the name of Bogdan Volk. He races to the scene of the crime to make his arrest.
When Officer Staub gets to that apartment and speaks to the apartment manager, Randy Campbell has already left. When he left, he stole the washer and dryer from the apartment.
Someone from the Pontiac dealership where a car was purchased calls and is investigating or inquiring about this apartment. Well, the manager doesn't get much info except tells the criminalist, oh, by the way, someone called from a Pontiac dealership about a car, and it's the same apartment you were just in. So I just started through the phone book, sat down and called each one individually, and then landed on Jason Deckard's name at a nearby Pontiac dealership, and that's where I learned that a person later identified as Randy Campbell had gone in and made this car purchase, claiming to be Jason Deckard from Texas.
There was a couple phone numbers that I was able to get that were on the application. So then afterward, I'm like, well, whatever, let me give it a try. I want to see if I could talk to the guy. So I was like, okay, how should I do this? He goes, well, he's applying to a lot of credit cards. So let me pretend I'm from some credit reporting agency.
Hi, this is ABC Creditors calling. You're approved for your credit. We just need to verify your address.
Okay.
He goes, hold on, what do you need? Why do you need the address for? Everything's on the application. I go, well, just read me the address. Well, just tell me what the address is. I mean, that's all I need. I just need to verify the address, and your credit line will be approved.
Okay, 168 Wilford Drive.
That's my address.
No,
The real Bogdan vote. Like, no, you're not. This is Bogdan. And then he hung up.
He left in the middle of the night from the first apartment complex, taking the washer and dryer with him. He moved, I think it was 1.3 miles down the road to another apartment complex. And when he moved in there, he had now completely assumed the name Jason Deckard for that apartment complex rental. Once we figured out where he was, there was some surveillance involved, me walking around the complex with the manager acting as a prospective tenant, taking some photos, and setting up for a raid.
How many people have their identity stolen in North America each year? 1 million? 9 million? 15 million? Or 25 million? Before the break, we asked, how many people have their identity stolen in North America every year? Is it 1 million? Or 9 million? 15 million? 25 million? Well, the answer is 9 million. According to one study, over 9 million people in North America have their identities stolen each year. That's over 24,000 identities stolen each day. Make sure you're doing all you can to protect your identity.
The second apartment complex we go to, that is where we conducted the raid and caught him. You've already run through it a few times, so everyone knows their part and what's going to happen. So it's never a dull moment, as they say. This is the Breckenridge apartment complex where we raided the apartment where Randy Campbell was renting an apartment using the name Jason Deckard.
Officer Staub and his team positioned themselves for the raid by moving behind the apartment complex in the early morning hours. Campbell was not going to slip through their fingers again.
When we actually did the raid itself, we pretty much hugged the building, and that just allows less ability or chance of someone to see us.
Go, go, go! Clear!
Not knowing what was waiting for them behind the door, Staub and his team drew their guns and braced themselves.
Go, go, go! Get your hands up! Don't you move! Get your hands up! Both of you stay right where you are. Don't move. Higher. Get your hands up now. Yeah, we got you.
Conducted the raid at about 5 o'clock in the morning. I attempted to interview him, and basically something to the effect of, you got here just in time, I was about to leave, you got me good, I got nothing to say to you. And that was the extent of my interview with Mr. Campbell.
Only because we were able to dedicate the resources, we were able to catch somebody like Randy Campbell.
We uncovered a ton of evidence inside his current apartment. This is binder number 1, and then I ended up with binder number 2, which I think is actually really a 6-inch binder. So 11 inches for Randy Campbell, and most people only get 5, which led us to go to the district attorney and say, hey, I know it's not usual in this kind of case, but we need to make sure he stays here.
We asked to have his bail increased to $1 million, which is an unusual amount, but we were very concerned given that he could make IDs or had sources to get IDs, very good IDs, so quickly.
Well, it was a mixed feeling. It was relief that this guy's gone, but what about if he had given my information to anybody else? The good thing that kind of was calming is that Officer Staub had mentioned that they had found a lot of my information in his apartment. or the other place, wherever he was staying. So it seemed like all of my information was in custody too and wasn't out there. But at that same time, you can never be too sure.
At the end of the day, he had nothing. He had nowhere to go, no defense to his actions, and led to his conviction. And I believe he took a 5-year plea. I found some other cases that appeared he'd been committing some kind of fraudulent activity for at least 2 years prior to me coming in contact with him.
And Randy Campbell is an example of someone that did this not because he had a meth addiction. He didn't have a drug addiction. Randy Campbell did this for a lifestyle choice.
And I understand how a good credit can help you in your life and how a bad credit can screw you over in life. So I did everything I could to make sure that my credit was perfect. The apartment that we were living at was kind of small, so I needed a bigger apartment because I had a kid on the way. So I'm trying to rent another apartment, I can't. So here I'm stuck at this little apartment with the kid on the way and can't do nothing about it.
What can you do to protect your identity and thwart identity thieves? Shred all documents containing personal information before they go to the trash. Never give out personal information to people that you don't know or trust. Check your credit rating often to ensure no one is opening any accounts in your name, or all of the above. Before the break, we asked, what can you do to protect your identity and thwart identity thieves? Shred all documents containing personal information before they go to the trash. Never give out personal information to people you don't know or trust. Check your credit rating often to ensure that no one's opening accounts in your name, or all of the above. Well, the answer is all of the above. All of these tips are helpful when trying to secure your identity information from criminals.
I was writing checks at local stores in the city of Portland, and I would go into the store and write checks for purchases, then do returns and get money back for the items.
Most of them accepted some responsibility for what they'd done, but I knew that there was a lot more going on. I was contacted by the Fred Merrick corporate fraud investigator about some people who were passing counterfeit business checks and personal checks at different Fred Meyer stores throughout the area here.
They were in this together? Mm-hmm. Okay. And did anybody else see this?
That same day that I got that information, a patrol officer called me to tell me that he had seized a computer and some documents from a trailer that was occupied by Carrie Pepin, who I later learned was part of the first investigation. It was clear that the two investigations were linked to each other based on the information from the computer. It looked like it was the same people that were passing the checks at Fred Meyer's.
I would say over 90% of the cases that I handle, the person has some drug addiction.
I was addicted to methamphetamines and had been using drugs for a very long time. And the last couple of years of my drug use got really heavy. Just got wrapped up with the desire to want more of them and did anything I could to get them. My oldest daughter had been living with her dad for a couple of years prior to that. My youngest daughter was living with me through part of it, but her dad came and got her as well before I was arrested, about a month and a half before I was arrested. And at that point, when he came and got her, I really went, I guess, off the deep end and started committing more crime, using more drugs, and just really didn't care about life.
There are people that are exceptionally greedy, so they're going for high volume, or they're exceptionally busy in the sense that they're doing many transactions. And Rochelle Ross and her group fell into the second category.
It was like more than a full-time job, actually. In doing so, there was creating checks. I actually had to make them myself. And there was creating IDs, remembering who I was each time I went to the store, because on a daily basis, I was somebody different.
Cops are just around the corner. That's it. Well, we'll get rid of it.
Officer Glass and her team were making progress. They were closing in on Rochelle and her identity theft ring. The criminals started to panic.
You don't want to use the most expensive lamination stock. And so you practice with plain paper. And that's a lot of what they had thrown out was just practice checks, but trash bags full.
We're at Walmart, Eastport Plaza Walmart. The bag of trash was found maybe 100 feet away from it. When I looked in the bag of trash, it was all the same stuff from the first 2 investigations. So I knew I was onto something.
I was told from people around town that the police were looking for me, that even different motel rooms, some people's houses that they had gone to looking for myself and some other people, showing my picture around. So I knew that it was coming.
A tip led Officer Glass to a part of town where she would find Rochelle. She found her sitting on a park bench where she was arrested without a fight.
Most of them accepted some responsibility for what they'd done, but I knew that there was a lot more going on.
How do you know?
Officer Glass interviewed several suspects and began to listen to phone calls made from prison.
You guys all party together.
She soon discovered how big the operation really was.
They don't know about the fake checks.
Hey, the 2 girls haven't even made it down there yet. They're still questioning them.
What did you say to the police about the bags? Mark wants to know. Yeah. He didn't say anything about no bags. That he was just giving you guys a ride. I'm getting rid of everything right now, as we speak.
As we speak.
Going right now. The shredder's almost full, we'll put it that way.
During the jail calls is Marcus telling his sister that I only know about the Fred Meyer transactions, that I know nothing about Safeway or Target or Walmart. So now I know. I sent out a request for the different store fraud investigators to look at their databases and see if they'd accepted any of the same checks from the same maker names, the same payee names as the bunch I was looking at. Safeway forwarded my request on to Certegy Check Verification Services, who dug around and sent me back this huge spreadsheet that had lists of all these transactions. They'd given that information to the Safeway fraud investigator, who emailed it to me with a little notification that said, "Barb, you're not going to believe this. Look at check number 5.
According to one police force, how many of the identity theft criminals they bust are linked to drug abuse, especially methamphetamine? Is it 90%, 50%, 30%, or 10%? Before we went to break, we asked, according to one police force, how many of the identity theft criminals they bust are linked to drug abuse, especially methamphetamine? Is it 90%, 50%, 30%, or 10%? Well, the answer is 90%. According to one police department, over 90% of the identity theft cases deal with drugs. Methamphetamine addicts often turn to fraud to make fast cash and easy money to feed their drug habits.
They'd given that information to the Safeway fraud investigator, who emailed it to me with a little notification that said, "Barb, you're not going to believe this. Look at check number 5. So I opened the file up and I looked at all the checks, and when I got to check number 5, there it was, a counterfeit check that had my name as the authorized signer on it. It was a business check, and the business address was my precinct address, and the maker name was Swept Away Cleaning. It was a little concerning because I didn't know how much more they'd done. And the best I could ever get out of any of them was that they thought that was the only one that they had done with my name on it, and that they hadn't done anything else.
Don't roll your eyes. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
It was extremely sad and very scary, extremely scary. I didn't know what was going to happen. I knew that what I was doing could send me to prison for a very long time.
During the interview I had with her, I said, you know, you're not a bad person. You're just doing really stupid, bad things, and you can turn this around.
I remember during my first interview with her, some words that she said to me before I went to prison were that she could tell I wasn't a bad person, that I had just made bad choices, and that I had the chance to change things. And if I just got my head straight, that I would be okay. And her telling me that actually really helped me make the choices I made while I was in prison and to turn things around for myself.
Rochelle Ross did receive a prison sentence. She also received opportunity for treatment, which I know that she has engaged in.
I am in recovery now. I have almost 2 years sobriety and don't ever wish to go back to that lifestyle. That stupid mistake of not shredding that bag of garbage or putting it in an actual dumpster saved my life. Because if that had not been found, maybe I wouldn't have been found when I was.
She may be one of a handful of people that I've sent to prison who actually get their stuff together and turn it around.
So when I got out, I contacted her and thanked her for those words and let her know that, you know, how much that meant to me.
Now, Fraud Squad is taking it to the streets to hear your stories.
So I've heard of these scams. They have these online contests that you can sign up for, and you know, they take all your information, your credit card number, your address, your phone number, on the premise that you're going to win all this stuff. But really, there are no prizes. They're just trying to get your information from you.
Okay, well, my mom went into a gas station a couple times. I think it happened 3 times, and yeah, they took her credit card and use it for little purchases, and then they slowly have it in bigger increments to hope that you don't find out, and then eventually find out, and you have to cancel all your credit cards and then get everything new again.
And it was just such a cheap, ridiculous, like $600 a month for like a full apartment downtown. And he said I just send him money, and then he'll send me the key to the place. And I was gonna do it, and then my roommate told me that was a scam. They used to use those things all the time on there, because I thought it was too good to be true. And usually when something's too good to be true, it is.
Well, we've come to the end of another episode of Fraud Squad. Remember, we're fighting fraud together. Hello, I'm Tom Natchu. Welcome to Fraud Squad. In this episode, we're going to look at fraud that targets the elderly. A fiduciary is a person that's entrusted with handling someone's financial affairs. In one case, we'll show you how a trusted fiduciary, recommended by lawyers and other authority figures, spent her client's life savings on her own gambling habit. Our second story shows how one elderly man fell in love with a young woman who had her sights set squarely on his bank account. But first, we're going to tell the story about how one woman found out far too late that the fraudster in this case was actually her own daughter.
In June of 2007, I became aware that my mother was not being looked after properly. She had been financially abused. Somebody had taken all of her money and left her basically destitute.
Majority of abuse against seniors is financial, about 80% in fact. At the end of the day, somebody wants their money, unfortunately.
I knew that she should have approximately 150 some odd thousand. The money kind of just disappeared. It didn't show up on my mother's banking records, and it was like somebody had stuck a needle in the back of your head. That was my first reaction, like, what do you mean?
You just have to sign here, and then you don't even have to worry about a thing.
My mother apparently made my sister power of attorney without any knowledge of my father or myself. As power of attorney, my sister virtually, from a financial standpoint, became my mother.
A power of attorney is a legal document where you give someone the right to access your finances for your benefit. Most seniors, when they make their power of attorney documents, they make their family, usually their son or daughter. And for the most part, that's fine. But there are sons and daughters out there who are stealing from their parents.
At that time, my mother, she was about $18,000 in debt to her caregivers, which was a municipality that she lives in.
In this case, the senior had dementia. And as the power of attorney, this daughter proceeded to steal $163,000 from her mother's bank account.
It was my sister that had basically neglected my mother to start with.
This daughter chose to go into the bank account and withdraw all this money, and she used a large portion of this money at the casino.
So she took them out of the bank machines at the casino, and we're kind of assuming that that's where most of the money went.
I received information from the casino that between her winnings and losings, she gambled in excess of $1 million.
What do you need? Went to the police. My first encounter with the police was not really good. I was told maybe I should look after it civilly. And after a large conversation about why I shouldn't have to look after it civilly, we did a report. Shortly after that, I became involved with Sergeant John Keating.
I was shocked by it, horrified by it, that somebody could actually take almost every penny that their mother had and use it for their own purpose.
John's very passionate about elder abuse, and eventually we got enough information that we arrested my sister, or as I call her now, my mother's daughter.
The daughter was arrested and brought to police to be interrogated. But when she found out she was going to be charged, she made an outlandish request.
My mother had a silver fox fur coat and hat that my dad had bought for her on one of his trips back home to Poland. And John arrested her. They went through all that process, and then she turned to John and she said, "Do you think it'd be okay if I kept my mother's silver fox hat and coat? We've never seen it to this day."
So this matter went to court, and this particular daughter was convicted of stealing this money from her mother.
From her standpoint, a slap on the wrist was basically what they were thinking was going to happen.
At this rate, it looks like she could get away with it. Okay.
The judge went out to deliberate how he was going to sentence her. And my wife actually pointed out that she had lied when the judge asked how much money she made in a year.
Why are senior citizens often targeted by fraudsters? Is it that seniors will have a nest egg of cash that fraudsters want to steal? Seniors are sometimes more trusting and polite and find it difficult to say no or just hang up the phone. Seniors are less likely to report being the victim of a scam, or all of the above. The answer is all of the above. Fraudsters like to target seniors because they know there's a lifetime of savings they can get their hands on. Help protect the seniors that you know.
The judge went out, John Keating came up and started to walk back, so I said to him, "That's not right. Like, she has more money than that, she's, gets more money than that." And he asked me if I could get a hold of my brother-in-law, who I still get along with. And I said yes. We phoned him in Nova Scotia. He spoke to John, and when the judge came back in, the prosecutor at the time said, "Before you, pass sentence here, there's something else you should know." You could see in his face that he was just furious.
There's not a lot of elder abuse cases in court, at least there wasn't a year or so ago when this took place. But we found that the judge was excellent. He gave a great sentence. I believe she was sentenced to a couple years of house arrest in order to pay restitution, and several years probation as well.
Elder abuse, financial abuse of this type, is starting to gain momentum across the country, and we have different police services that are actually starting to do something about it.
Seniors are from a generation where when things happened within their family, bad things, they kept it between the four walls. Mom is never going to tell anybody because she doesn't want to spread the bad things around that are going on in her family. She's embarrassed of the fact that one of her children might be harming her, stealing her money. So they keep it between the four walls quite often.
In my mother's case, they beat her. You don't see the blood and the wounds, but they are there.
A fiduciary is a person entrusted with handling someone's financial affairs. In one case, we'll show you how a trusted fiduciary recommended by lawyers and other authority figures, spent her client's life savings on her own gambling habit.
Teresa Lagner was a private fiduciary in the San Diego area. Miss Lagner had built up a reputation over a variety of years as being someone who was trustworthy and could be appointed or hired as a fiduciary. When a trust became open where a fiduciary was necessary to be appointed, Mrs. Lagner's name came up quite often. A fiduciary is generally someone who is entrusted with handling the financial affairs of someone else, and the way you handle those have to be completely for the benefit of the beneficiary of the trust.
The Secret Service investigate various types of financial crimes, different types of bank frauds, credit card frauds, anything basically to do with the financial institutions.
The Lagner case came to my attention during a monthly meeting that we have as part of our task force. After we subpoenaed the bank accounts for Miss Lagner and had access to the bank accounts that belong to the trusts and the estates, we were able to determine that large amounts of money, large chunks of the money, was being transferred.
In this case, what she was able to do quite easily is make financial transfers of monies from the bank accounts of the beneficiaries to her own personal and business accounts. In fact, she was able to do this all on the internet, online banking. The Secret Service received information of a suspicious activity report that one of the banks had reported that caused them to believe that something was strange going on in a particular trust account. She made all of the transfers electronically, and then she was able to withdraw those either through ATMs or writing checks at the casinos, and they would cash them for her. Very often, the beneficiaries were elderly, they were mentally infirm. What she did was target large trusts where the beneficiary was not fully aware of all the financial transactions.
We knew that Miss Lagner had been transferring funds from victim accounts, so it was an ongoing criminal enterprise. And because of that, we knew that it was essential for us to work the case as quickly as possible. After we determined that money was being spent at local casinos, agents conducted a surveillance of Miss Lagner, both at her business and at the casino. As far as winnings go, she seemed to be losing a lot more money than she was winning.
There was quite a bit of money that went through the casinos, almost as much as $1 million.
The primary amount of money was going towards her gambling habit.
There was one trust in particular that was left for an elderly woman who was a cancer survivor. She was particularly devastated because Miss Lagner was actually the second fiduciary who came on her case. The first fiduciary was also stealing from this particular victim. She personally interviewed and hired Miss Lagner, and then later learned that she had been lied to and Miss Lagner was stealing money from her. We found that there was over $100,000 that was taken from this particular victim and gambled away at the casinos.
Once we were able to place her at the casino on several occasions, we felt comfortable enough to then bring the case and present it to the United States Attorney's Office.
She was ultimately charged with wire fraud, meaning that she was causing losses to people using the interstate transmissions, and in this case, both internet banking transactions and wire transfers.
Once the search warrants were obtained, we served simultaneous warrants on both her house and her business at the same time. During the execution of the search warrant at her residence, immediately upon entering her house, we encountered a house in complete disarray. It seemed to everybody involved that we had an individual who was into hoarding things. There were boxes everywhere. There were animal feces on the floor, and there were food products that seemed to have been purchased from the store weeks and months prior that sat stale on the counter. After securing the location, we located Miss Lagner and her husband inside of the home. Agents searched the home, and I conducted an interview with Miss Lagner. During the search of the residence, we seized a number of boxes of paperwork that related to various trusts that she had been managing. Miss Lagner's demeanor was shocked, in a way standoffish with the agents who were interviewing her at first. After several minutes into the interview, I got the feeling that Miss Lagner knew that we had discovered what she had been up to, and she went into a mode of simply stating that she had made a mistake.
This was the local school foundation.
She came in to see both the prosecutor and the agents to go over how many trusts she actually had a control over and how many transactions, illegal transactions, she had actually made. There were quite a few interviews explaining to her the extent of the damage that she caused. She knew that she was taking improperly from a lot of the trusts and gambling them away, but she had no idea the extent of the money that she had taken.
After we received the material, both from her residence and her work, at her work, approximately 120 boxes were seized. We were able to determine after combing through the records we seized at her work that they simply did not match with the bank records that we had reviewed from both her bank and the bank records of the victims.
When Ms. Lagner met with agents, it was obvious that she was very emotional about what had happened. She had prided herself in being a trusted fiduciary for many years and now realized that she had not only let herself down and all of the victims down, but many of the attorneys who had relied on her to be a trustee. She knew that this was the end of her career and was afraid that she would not be able to make amends to all the victims that she took money from. What we learned from this case was that it was quite easy for someone with complete control over trust funds to take and withdraw money immediately. Ms. Lagner was sentenced to 18 months custody in federal prison, and she was also ordered to pay full restitution back for the trust that she had taken from. So ultimately, she was ordered to pay back $471,000.
What is a fiduciary? A person to whom property is entrusted for the benefit of someone else? A person who receives the money from a person's bank account? A company that makes loans to trusted persons? Or a company that manufactures fiddle? Well, here's the answer. A fiduciary is a person to whom property is entrusted for the benefit of someone else. They're often given the power to control the financial affairs of someone who cannot take care of their own finances.
The women that get involved in these situations are professionals. They know what they're doing.
One elderly man fell in love with a young woman who set her sights squarely on his bank account.
The sweetheart scams are very successful because, for one thing, it's very hard to prosecute. Usually the older gentlemen, the gentlemen that these people target, they're either living by themselves, they're recent widows, they've never been married. They usually have a pretty lonely existence.
They probably haven't had a female in their life for a while, and when some young, pretty thing flirts with them, the ego gets stroked.
One situation that happened right here in Cook County was with an elderly man who was alone at a restaurant and had been approached by a woman.
The young woman sat down, they started up a conversation. Before you know it, she invited him to dinner.
He enjoyed her companionship. They did become friends. She did have many of the situations, the emergencies coming up in her life.
He comes over to dinner. She starts saying that my daughter needs a heart transplant. We need cash now or the bills will be astronomical. I do not have insurance. I do not have any other means to pay that. He gave her a check for $60,000.
The women who participate in this sweetheart scam are Eastern European, and they travel. They're not just located in one location.
Now again, this was a man all throughout his life. He was watching every penny he ever made. He was not go on these exotic vacations. He did not really even go on vacations. Everything he did, he knew down to the penny. He was very cheap in what he did. And all of a sudden, this woman comes into his life again, telling him that, oh, I love you, I care for you. And the next thing you know, probably within a year and a half, he is out $400,000.
If she wasn't available to visit him at home and give him a hug, she would have a family member come. A niece, maybe a sister, who knows what the relations were. And never anything that you might imagine, more of just a hug, a friendly gesture, something that he didn't have anywhere else, but he was getting from them.
She invited him to his house. When they got to the house, she was there. A person that she introduced as her brother was there. Her brother's kids were there. These all turned out later on to be basically her husband and her children. They sat down, they would have dinner. Next thing you know, they would tell him what a great guy he was. They would show him around the house. They went down to the basement and said, oh, we have to get this basement finished, but we have no money. He willingly admitted, say, I will give you the money to finish the basement.
Sure.
Some of these women that we have been dealing with usually are involved with other scams as well that we have. They are usually from like a clannish group who operate in an extended family type setting where usually other members are also involved with some other type of fraud and some other type of theft going on as well.
What is this, Dad? Like, look at all the money you have spent on her.
He was paying bills for them, he was draining his account, and when his son did see these accounts going down, was outraged, went to the police, made the report, and as the police got involved, the victim would scream at them. He wanted them out of his house.
I would go in there and I was asking him how he was doing. I would bring up the subject of this young lady, and all of a sudden he would get very defensive. He would say, this is my girlfriend, this is someone that I care about, this is someone that I want in my life.
As the police would leave his home, he would call and give reports to his sweetheart and let her know that the police were asking and that, you know, he wanted to reassure her, everything is fine, I love you, and she would of course say, well, I love you too.
He truly believed that this woman cared for him. He truly believed that this woman had his best interests at heart.
It's very embarrassing for the man to come forward and say, I was duped, I was taken advantage of. But then once you've opened his eyes about what has occurred here, it becomes abundantly clear you don't have enough for a criminal act because he voluntarily gave all this money.
What is one of the best ways to help protect the seniors in your life from fraudsters? Read all of their mail without their knowledge. Make sure you check out any new friends they make. Be involved in their life. Call regularly and include them in activities. Or study their monthly phone bill for any unusual calls. Well, the correct answer is the best way to determine if a senior in your life may be involved in a fraudulent scheme is to meet with them regularly. Call them and include them in activities. This interaction may help identify if a fraudster has entered their life.
At one time, he had to go into the hospital. When he was released from the hospital, they did not see he was fit to go home, so he went into this nursing home. The only time she did come around, and this happened probably 2 to 3 days before his death.
She's in a room with him, videoing, making sure to have on tape how much they loved each other, that he never had a problem with their relationship, with the money that he provided.
She was videotaping this man, and what she was asking him is, do you want me to be prosecuted? Do you want me to go to jail? Do you want the police to leave me alone?
You gave me the money freely, right? Of course.
So just in case something came down the road, some charges, she had that on tape. He loved her. He wanted to give her this money.
When the victim is depleted, then they will go on to someone else. He could not afford anything. He was basically being on a taxpayer's roll.
These type of crimes occur all so often, and it's unfortunate that I see no end in sight.
Well, we've come to the end of another episode of Fraud Squad. Remember, we're fighting fraud together. For more information on this and other episodes of Fraud Squad, go to investigationdiscovery.ca.